I will start with introduction to Old Dongola. Then I'm going to outline the problems that this project aims to solve. And then I'm going to introduce a multi-elemental analysis of floors and its application in Old Dongola. Then I'm going to present the results of the analysis, as well as interpretation, including activity areas, multifunctionality, organization of households, and iconic perspective on household in Old Dongola. Old Dongola was the capital of Makurian kingdom until the 14th century. Later of the kingdom of Old Dongola, subjugated to the Funj Sultanate from the 16th century. It comprises a vast area with its fortified center, so-called citadel, erected on a rocky plateau, built of Nubian sandstone and raised a few meters above the river Nile. The city was excavated in frames of UMMA, ERC starting grant, led by Artur Obłuski. The investigation focused on periods from the 14th century until the 18th century and aimed to identify changes of the society inhabiting Dongola during the transition between the Makurian and Funj periods, so 14th, 18th century. And the location of the citadel and the investigated houses is important for the chemistry of floors. All the constructions were made of Nile alluvium, which is also the major building material of floors. Most of the area, actually all of the area excavated in the frames of UMMA grant comprise of house compounds, so the settlement. The environmental conditions and relatively recent origin of the analyzed houses resulted in a good state of preservation of the houses, architecture, objects, and floors. Even the botanical remains were exceptionally preserved. So we really know a lot about how the houses look like and what the households do, but not necessarily where. The interiors of the houses were swept, so no occupational layers accumulated inside. And on the other hand, the courtyards, open courtyards, did not have many pieces of equipment. So as a result, I'm purposefully oversimplifying that. We have house compounds comprising multifunctional courtyards that gave access to multifunctional vestibules, multifunctional residential rooms equipped with multifunctional benches, and only actually the storage function was identified with certain spaces. So as you can see, that was important to identify actually where the domestic tasks actually happened, facing the lack of, in most cases, lack of built equipment. Also, there's the same situation with the large courtyards. So numerous finds attest grinding, cooking, spinning, plating, animal presence. What we didn't really know was how and where the courtyards accommodated all these things. So where exactly the cooking happened, where the animals were kept, and all the other activities that leave detectable trace. The other issue that actually appeared over the course of excavations was that architecturally, the 14th century apparently still Makurian houses did not differ much from the 17th, 18th century houses. So there is almost the same form of the house, so a residential unit and a narrow storage. You can see it also here. There is a residential unit, a narrow storage, and a courtyard that was shared by some other houses located within a compound. So yeah, when the houses are described extensively, so from the architectural perspective, as comprising multifunctional residential units and these multifunctional courtyards, tracking changes in organization of household is quite challenging because, from this extensive architectural perspective, nothing really changed. The idea how to tackle these problems was to apply the multi-elemental analysis of floors. The analyses have proven to be a useful tool in the interpretation of the archaeological record, since human activities leave detectable traces, chemical traces. The chemical compounds from residues associated with distinguishable human actions tend to fix rapidly to the mineral surface of sediment grains of floors and remain stable, at least in the arid weather conditions of the Middle Nile Valley. The most popular method has been phosphorus analysis, indicating the occurrence of food waste, harsh debris, and latrines. Phosphorus alone is sufficient as an indicator of human presence, although considering that it might be associated with a variety of human activities, its application leads to conclusions that remain very general. Multi-chemical analysis, including analysis of multiple elements selected for the purpose of this study, have a long history of use in archaeology, including sites in Africa, also a small-scale study in Amara West in Sudan. That was conducted by Matt Dalton. The identification is based on comparative studies, so usually it's vague, as many elements, especially plant nutrients, occur with vast array of human activities. So you can see here that calcium, potassium, phosphorus, magnesium are mentioned as elements associated with a lot of activities, human-related activities, that are connected with processing of plant and animal tissues. And also many of them are products of animal and human metabolism. In case of Old Dongola, and most likely more general in the Middle Nile Valley, there is another challenge, namely the main building material is the Nile alluvium, which is already rich in elements that are usually associated with some human actions. So zinc, for instance, manganese, iron, strontium, calcium, phosphorus, magnesium, potassium. As you can see, the values for the samples from Nile silt and mud brick made of this alluvium compared with various desert clays and the topsoil in adjacent village of El Gaddal. So the values are really high, and the question is whether it is possible to identify anthropogenic input. And furthermore, as I don't know if I already mentioned that, the building material in Dongola citadel is mostly reused. So the mud is dug up in the citadel, not brought from the Nile. That's why it can already contains anthropogenic input from the previous periods. So when the brick or the floor is made of dissolved bricks from earlier periods, it's very likely that it already contains anthropogenic input. Nevertheless, I collected samples from 4 house compounds. So houses grouped around a shared courtyard. The compounds most likely constituted a single household. They were dated roughly to each century, from the 14th until the 17th century. I marked them on this orthophoto of the Dongola citadel. So here was located the 14th century house compound, 15th century, 16th century compound has the same location as 14th century, but it's just from the next phase. And the 17th century house compound was located in the eastern part of the citadel. Here you can see the whole process. So there was a grid plotted on a house from which I collected samples from the uppermost layer, previously cleared from other anthropogenic layers. Then, as illustrated in the attached graph, the samples were packed, ground, and sieved, then sent to lab to multi-elemental analysis. In order to identify elemental enrichments with particular activities to supplement already existing literature, I collected reference samples from ethnographically or archaeologically confirmed activity areas. So from adjacent village and the archaeological site in Old Dongola. The table here presents enrichments and depletions compared to the background level. So yeah, burning is apparently associated with some enrichments in calcium, phosphorus, potassium, magnesium, sulfur. Animal presence, almost the same elements, actually. You can see latrines here, meat processing and food processing. So this table were used for identification of this elemental pattern with a particular activity. Okay, let's move to the analyzed house compounds. The samples were collected from the available surfaces. So surfaces that were uncovered during excavations and were with preserved contemporary floors. 14th century house compound. In the 14th century house compound, only the southern half was sampled because that was the half that was uncovered during my the field part of the research. So the main residential unit actually was not tested. That was located in the north. Just this southern half with this room, which was also possibly residential. In the 15th century house compound, also only one of at least two houses in the compound was sampled. That comprised a residential unit and a storage, and also this part of the courtyard was sampled. The 16th century house compound was built in the same location as the 14th century. So also only this southern half was sampled. It included also this house with a residential unit and a storage. The 17th century house compound comprised two residential units, one here and the second one here, but considering a single building. So all this area was also sampled. So a courtyard, vestibule leading to a residential unit and storage. So as we could see, all the compounds were very similar in architectural terms, comprising two-room houses and shared courtyard. This is an example of the crude data. So values of 33 elements in samples from a single room. I already skipped uranium because there was none in the samples that were analyzed. The data was mapped in QGIS. First, I used the interpolation, but well, actually, when we have a regular grid, apart from the fact that interpolation looks nice because it's colorful, there is no need for interpolation when there is a regular grid. So I decided simply to show the values compared to the background. Let's see in the middle. So from 0 and below 0 are depleted compared to the background, and above 0 are enriched with elements. So there was the other issue with already existing inputs in this reused material that was probably responsible for some of the peaks in the values of elements. To address this issue, I decided to use the spatial analysis toolbox plug into QGIS to calculate local Morans 1 autocorrelation to identify statistically significant cluster of high to high and low to low values. When there is no local moraines, it means that the values were, according to it, were distributed randomly. Okay, let's see how the distribution of elements looks within the house compound. I'm not going to show you distribution of all the elements, the 33 elements in all four house compounds. Just some examples and a summary that combine all the results. Here we can see that phosphorus and strontium, clearly there are clusters of low and high values of this element within the courtyard. Inside the room, there were too few samples to calculate the autocorrelation, although the values were generally higher than the background level. It's the same with zinc and calcium. You can see it here, also the clusters of high values and low values, and especially zinc got very high values inside the room. The summary shows that first, the cluster dendrogram shows that values of most of the elements are correlated, mostly because they are mostly the plant nutrients. While PCA show that there is only a small difference between the room, you've 242 and the courtyard, 44, with higher values of most of the elements inside the room. Although if this is because of elemental input of dwellers or admixture to the building material of floor inside the room, is difficult to determine actually. In the courtyard, there were three areas distinguished by their elemental enrichments of depletions. First, with enhanced values of manganese, strontium, calcium, titanium, copper, magnesium, with depleted values of potassium and phosphorus. The second area was only with depleted values of certain elements. And the third area with elevated values of mostly plant nutrients. So the first is a bit puzzling, especially because of depleted values of phosphorus, the most general indicator of human-related activities, and as well as potassium. The enrichments in metallic elements may suggest some craft-related related to mineral processing. The second area with depleted values of numerous elements may attest only communication purpose of this space. While the third area fit the best to the processing of plant and animal tissues, as well as the presence of animals, because some of the elements, especially phosphorus and zinc, are also related to animal metabolism. Interestingly, in this 15th century compound, distribution of high and low values seem to be random, but still mostly above the background level. Again, higher values are within the house compared to the courtyard, as you can see in here. It's the same with zinc and calcium. According to Moran's one, all the values are just randomly distributed. So the random distribution in uncovered part of the compound doesn't mean that there were no domestic activities, but rather there's lack of prolonged activity areas, at least in the part uncovered during excavations. Higher values within the house, but still randomly distributed, might attest also plant inclusions, including animal dung in the building material, or may derive from the occupational layer, including animal dung, that accumulated immediately on the floor in the face of abandonment. Also, interestingly, the values of elements are not higher in the storage. That, well, actually, I anticipated that the values of at least plant nutrients should be higher in the storage than in the residential unit, but nothing like that happened in this case. Yeah, because in the storage we can expect some spillage of staples that were stored there, but apparently they left no traces. Also, in the case of the 16th century house compound, only the southern part was sampled. The values of most of the elements, including phosphorus and calcium, as you can see here, were randomly distributed within the house, still at above the background level. Well, in the courtyard, the statistically significant clusters of values of phosphorus and calcium, you can see, were located in the western, central, and eastern part of the compound. It's yeah, the same with zinc and strontium. So there is an area in the west, some depleted values in the central part, and enrichments in the eastern part. Again, higher values of elements inside the house may result from composition of building material, occupational layer accumulated above, or certain activity that occurred inside the houses. Three distinctive areas were identified in the courtyard. So first, with enrichments in zinc, sulfur, magnesium, phosphorus, calcium, some depleted values of, for example, manganese, barium, titanium, iron, etc. The second, only with depleted values of mostly human-related, elements associated with human-related activities. And the third area in the east, mostly with enhanced values of plant nutrients. In the first area, in the west, the high values of phosphorus, potassium, magnesium, and especially sulfur, with depleted values of some metallic elements, may attest it match with elemental pattern of ashes that were observed in these reference samples, especially sulfur, actually. So it may attest that this was a Meidans where the ashes were deposited. Central part with depleted values also probably played a communication purpose in the house, especially if it's located in the central part of the courtyard, right next to the passage between these two parts of the courtyard. And the third area with high values of plant nutrients may attest plant and animal tissues processing, especially phosphorus, calcium, and barium, as well as products of metabolism of animals. So it is the interpretation of this area of enrichment with food preparation is also corroborated with a hearth that was located here, and a possible quern emplacement located here. In the case of the 17th century house compound, elements were randomly distributed in the courtyard, all of them. At the same time, the clusters of high values of elements occur mostly in the vestibule and in the storage. So, except phosphorus, this is the vestibule and this is the storage. You can see that also in the case of zinc and calcium, there are these areas of enhanced values of zinc in the central part of the vestibule and also in the front of the storage. The distribution is well reflected in PCA. Vestibule samples are richer in plant nutrients. Main difference between courtyard and storage and vestibule and residential unit lay mostly in the values of aluminium, lanthanide, thorium, and niobium. Most likely because the latter, the vestibule and the residential unit, the surfaces of floor were whitewashed with white desert clay, highly weathered material, hence the high values of aluminium. Areas of enrichment shows that the vestibule with enhanced values of plant nutrients was most likely a space for food preparation, while residential units remained rather free from these dirty domestic tasks. Only areas of high values of human-related elements occur by the entrances to spaces were also with high values of elements related to human activities, so the storage and the vestibule. So possibly the hypothesis is that that was only a sort of contamination from other spaces. So the question is, what do these results mean for the understanding of domestic space? First is that the areas of enrichment may constitute activity areas as long as the activity areas are spaces of prolonged activity or set of overlapping activities, actually with sufficient level of residuality, such as cooking. High values of elements on vast areas of house compounds and macro remains, such as pellets of animal dung, tools, and other objects, suggest that most of the areas experience some activities, but they concentrated in these areas of enrichments. So yeah, it doesn't mean that the rest of the courtyard was not used. I think it just means that the activities with high residuality concentrated in these two areas, for instance. And additionally, the high resolution data helps to change perspective from extensive, in which house compounds comprise spatially defined multifunctional spaces, to intensive perspective, in which domestic space is constituted by everyday actions, so it's flexible and changeable. The multi-elemental analysis of floors also helps to define relations between different residues of human actions. In this case, we can see clusters of stone tools that were apparently discarded outside the activity area related to food preparation. Without the analysis, one can identify activity areas with cluster of tools, but the fact that this discard pattern is probably more complex than that. The main aim of this project was to provide a diachronic perspective on the changes in households between the 14th and the 17th century. Well, I think it did provide that perspective, but it didn't show that the social change, only because it doesn't allow us to reconstruct a typical household representative for each century or other time interval period, for instance. But I think it helps us to understand that we shouldn't search for a typical household, as despite the similar form, each household may, as we saw, have functioned differently. And possibly this is the reason why the architectural form of Dongolese houses is so persistent, because the flexible domestic space was able to accommodate very different households in terms of functioning and organization. Just to, yeah, also should mention that the project received funding from National Science Center Poland, but the fieldwork was funded from European Research Council. I wish to thank Artur Obłuski for letting me carry out this project in Dongola, Balbala Bolonko for helping with the geological aspect of the project, Anna Wadzińska for promoting the grant application, Adrian Chybowski for measurements, and Lorenzo Delelis, who supervised excavations of half of the house compounds that I analyzed, and yeah, for discussing with me the functioning of these houses. Thank you very much for your attention.